Welcome to Tell Me More Stories Told This podcast.
Great to be here.
Today, we're diving into a digital tale that really felt like it leaps straight out of a horror movie and right into our news feeds. We're talking about the Momo Challenge.
Ah, yes, Momo.
Forget those hazy memories of headlines you might have glimpsed. We're going on a bit of an adventure today to uncover the strange, kind of unsettling journey of this online phenomenon.
That's right. If you think back to July 2018, it really started as a whisper online, didn't it?
Yeah, like in the corners of YouTube comments.
Exactly. People were talking about this disturbing trend, this self-harm thing that, it seemed to echo the blue whale challenge from the year before.
Right, blue whale. That was scary, too.
Yeah. So for you listening, just imagine that initial unease, that feeling online like something wasn't quite right.
And just a month later, August 2018, that unease, it turned into something, well, much bigger, much more alarming. News reports started surfacing, linking alleged cases of self-harm. I think South America and India were mentioned early on, to these really eerie WhatsApp messages.
Supposedly from this character, Momo.
Yeah.
The whole idea was just chilling.
It really was. The early reports suggested that this Momo character was somehow convincing people, often kids and teens, to reach out to them directly.
Right, through their phones. This wasn't just like a scary post you scroll past.
Huh?
It felt like a direct personal contact, which, well, it added a whole new layer of fear for anyone hearing about it. Imagine your phone buzzing with a message like that. Brr.
Definitely creepy. And the stories claim that once you made contact, you'd be given this series of tasks.
Increasingly dangerous ones, apparently.
Right. And if you, the person on the other end, refused, if you didn't want to play along.
That's when the threats were supposed to start. And those truly gruesome images.
Exactly. It painted a really, really disturbing picture for anyone, especially parents, just trying to figure out what their kids might be encountering online.
And as these stories began to, spread like wildfire, authorities around the globe really started paying attention.
Understandably.
By late July 2018, even the French Ministry of the Interior was actively looking into it. They recognized the potential danger if these claims were actually true.
It just shows how seriously governments were taking these early reports.
Yeah, absolutely. And the worry wasn't just in France. Throughout August and September 2018, we saw this wave of public warnings.
Where from?
Police forces in places like Argentina, Germany, Luxembourg, Spain, Canada, Mexico, the U.S.
Wow, okay, so a truly global reaction to this digital phantom.
Yeah, pretty much. And what's fascinating here, I think, is how the fear even managed to seep into the world of online gaming.
Gaming? How?
Specifically Minecraft, the huge block building game.
Yeah, of course. How did Momo get into Minecraft?
Well, reports started surfacing that this Momo character was somehow appearing within the game.
Wait, like officially?
Yeah.
Or...
No, not officially. It was apparently through the creativity, or maybe mischief, of the players themselves.
Okay.
Users were creating game skins, the outfits for their characters that looked like that unsettling Momo image. And there was even talk of unofficial modifications, like game mods. Think of them as little add-ons players can install.
Right.
And one of these mods apparently brought the character directly into the game world.
So a kid playing Minecraft could just suddenly stumble across this really creepy figure.
Potentially, yeah. That's definitely a recipe for a scare, isn't it?
For sure.
And there was actually a specific instance reported. A police officer in Ohio, he voiced his deep concern after his own son encountered this Momo thing while playing Minecraft.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the worry, understandably, was that this could expose kids to the fear, maybe even draw them into this so-called challenge,
So what did Microsoft do? They own Minecraft, right?
They do, and they did take notice. They announced they were taking steps to restrict access to the mod, was the phrase I think they used.
So they tried to shut it down.
Yeah, essentially. Which shows you how even user-created stuff can trigger serious concern and, well, action from the big companies.
It's amazing, isn't it, how quickly these online scares can jump from just a rumor, maybe, to real-world anxieties for parents, for law enforcement.
It really is. But as we dig a bit deeper into the Momo story, you start to see that the reality behind the panic, well, it was maybe far more complex.
Okay, how so?
Well, while those initial reports painted a very, very concerning picture, the investigations that followed actually began to reveal a different story.
Like actual police investigations?
Yeah. For example, India's Central Bureau of Investigation, the CBI, in West Bengal, They launched a proppy investigation into media reports that had linked 2 tragic teen deaths to the Momo challenge.
Okay, and what did they find? Did they confirm the link?
No, quite the opposite, actually. On August 29, 2018, the CBI concluded that these claims were, and this is a direct quote, far-fetched and devoid of any evidence.
Wow. Far-fetched. That's pretty strong.
It is. In fact, their belief was that many of these Momo Challenge invitations circulating in India were probably just pranks. Local attempts to spread fear and panic.
So it was more about the fear spreading than an actual organized challenge causing direct harm.
That really seems to be the case based on what the CBI found. A spokesperson for them even stated at the time, so far the game has not claimed any victim, nor has anyone approached us saying they have played even the first level of it.
That's incredible. Despite all the global worry, the main investigators in one of the key regions found nothing concrete.
Pretty much. No actual evidence of the challenge itself causing harm.
And was it just the CBI saying this, or did other police forces find similar things?
Yeah, it seems consistent. Across India, other police forces found it basically impossible to definitively link the Momo challenge to tragic events like the suicides of a 10th grade girl and an engineering student that had been reported in the media.
Were there other factors in those cases?
Yes, sadly. In those cases, other significant pressures, like intense academic stress, seem to be much more likely contributing factors. The Odisha police even went so far as to advise the media directly, be extremely cautious, avoid publishing unconfirmed links between teen deaths and this supposed challenge.
It really sounds like the hard evidence, the proof to back up those terrifying initial claims, it just wasn't materializing.
That's a really crucial point for listeners to understand, I think. While the fear was absolutely palpable and very real for many people,
Yeah, the fear was real.
the concrete proof connecting the Momo challenge directly to actual harm remained very, very elusive.
Okay. But even with that lack of evidence, governments and online platforms still took some pretty serious actions, right? They didn't just ignore it.
Oh, absolutely not. The government of Pakistan, for instance, announced plans to actually create laws specifically against distributing both the Momo challenge and the Blue Whale challenge.
So they were legislating against it.
Yeah, it shows how seriously they perceived the threat, even if the evidence on the ground was shaky.
And what about the platforms, like WhatsApp, where it supposedly started?
WhatsApp did encourage its users to actively block and report any phone numbers that seemed to be associated with it all.
Giving users tools to fight back, kind of?
Exactly. Trying to give you, the user, the tools to protect yourself and maybe disrupt any spread.
It's interesting, though, how quickly that initial panic seemed to fade, at least in that first wave.
It is. By September 2018, just a few short months after that initial surge of reports, most of those phone numbers that were supposedly linked to Momo, they were just inactive, dead ends. And as a result, the really intense news coverage surrounding it also began to decrease pretty significantly. It felt like the first wave of fear was starting to recede.
The story of Momo didn't completely disappear then, did it? I feel like I remember it popping up again later.
You're absolutely right. It didn't vanish. The narrative around Momo definitely experienced a kind of second wave of concern, maybe, in early 2019.
Okay, what happened then?
Well, in February 2019, the Police Service of Northern Ireland issued another public warning. This time, I think it was through a post on Facebook.
So the concern lingered.
It did, and even some very well-known personalities got involved around then, didn't they?
Oh, yeah. Like who?
Kim Kardashian, actually. She used her Instagram story, which has a massive reach, obviously, to urge YouTube to remove any videos that supposedly featured Momo.
Wow. Okay.
It just highlights the continued anxiety, especially among parents. For you listening, it shows how deeply this fear had kind of embedded itself in the public consciousness even months later.
And the reports of where Momo was supposedly appearing also shifted a bit in that second wave, right? It wasn't just WhatsApp anymore.
Exactly. In this later period, there were more reports of Momo popping up in videos on platforms like YouTube and even, worryingly, YouTube Kids.
YouTube Kids? Oh, that's not good.
No. And these included videos that supposedly featured really popular children's characters like Peppa Pig or clips related to the game Fortnite.
Oh, man. That would understandably cause significant alarm for parents trying to keep their kids safe online.
Absolutely. It really does sound like by this point, the whole thing had become what you might call a widespread moral panic.
Yeah, that term seems to fit.
That's precisely how many experts and commentators started viewing it. The fear and anxiety surrounding Momo just seemed to have taken on a life of its own, amplified by social media, amplified by news reports, even if the original threat wasn't substantiated.
Leading to more warnings.
Exactly. More advisories being issued by police, by schools, by various internet safety organizations. Though it's important for you to note, some of these later warnings actually shifted focus a bit.
How so?
They focused more on the potential risks of, like, identity theft.
Yeah.
Cyber criminals may be trying to capitalize on the Momo scare to trick people.
So using the fear of Momo for other scams.
Precisely. So the initial fear of direct harm kind of morphed into this broader concern about online exploitation in general.
Okay. And as these investigations kept finding, well, a lack of concrete evidence of the challenge itself, did people start pushing back against the panic?
Yes, definitely. A growing number of voices began to question the reality of the Momo challenge.
So when did the idea that it was actually a hoax really start to gain serious traction?
I'd say around March 2019, several experts began to publicly urge the media and even authorities to maybe stop amplifying the issue so much.
Why? Because it was causing unnecessary fear.
That was part of it. Figures like the Children's Commissioner for England pointed out, look, there are still no confirmed cases of physical harm. There aren't even any verified sustained interactions between this Momo character and anyone.
Right, so the core claims weren't holding up.
Exactly. For you listening, this really marks a turning point where the narrative began to shift away from dangerous challenge towards internet hoaxes.
It sounds like these experts were suggesting that all the attention, all the headlines were potentially causing more anxiety than the supposed challenge ever did.
That's a very insightful way to put it. And prominent organizations, really trusted ones like the NSPCC, the Samaritans, the UK Safer Internet Center, they actually came out and declared the Momo challenge to be a hoax.
Explicitly called it a hoax.
Yes, explicitly. And it was partly in direct response to some of the more sensational tabloid coverage that was still claiming it was real and dangerous.
Wow. And what about some of those initial stories that helped fuel the panic in the first place? Did any of those get, re-examined?
Interestingly, yes. There was a case you might remember hearing about, a parent who had initially raised concerns very publicly about the Momo challenge affecting her child.
Okay.
She later admitted that her child hadn't actually received any messages from Momo directly.
Oh.
The child had simply heard about it from other kids, during a conversation on the school playground.
No way. So a playground rumor.
Contributed to a global scare.
Yeah.
It really highlights for you how easily rumors and secondhand information can just explode and contribute to widespread panic, especially online.
That's incredible, really. So what did the experts, the folklorists, the web security people ultimately conclude about the whole Momo challenge thing?
Overwhelmingly, they categorized it as a classic case of moral panic.
Moral panic. Define that quickly.
It's basically when public fear and anxiety about an issue, often involving media sensationalism, is way out of proportion to the actual threat posed by that issue.
Okay.
They saw Momo as a sensationalized hoax, significantly amplified by unverified, often breathless, media reports.
And this wasn't the first time something like this had happened online, was it? You mentioned Blue Whale earlier.
No, not at all. Benjamin Radford, who studies these things, explicitly likened it to the Blue Whale game. He noted Momo had all the hallmarks of a classic moral panic.
What are those hallmarks?
Well, he pointed out how these scares are often fueled by parents' legitimate fears, wanting to know what their kids are up to online. There's this sort of inherent fear sometimes about what young people are doing with technology we don't fully understand.
That makes a lot of sense. The internet can feel like a bit of a black box sometimes, especially for parents trying to keep up.
Absolutely. And even David Mickelson, the founder of Snopes, the fact-checking website, he expressed serious doubt that anyone was actually harmed by the Momo challenge itself.
So what did he think was going on?
He suggested the whole thing was likely exploited by, bullies and pranksters. They latched onto the fear surrounding Momo as a way to maybe torment vulnerable young people, rather than it being some intrinsic part of an organized viral social media challenge spreading on its own.
So even if the initial threat was largely unfounded, that doesn't mean there weren't real negative consequences, like fear, anxiety.
Exactly. And potentially real bullying using the idea of Momo. The panic itself can be very damaging, absolutely.
Okay, before we wrap up, let's shift focus just a bit to the visual element, that image.
Ah, the face of Momo.
How could anyone forget it? That pale face, The super wide, almost distorted smile, those huge, bulging eyes. It was genuinely disturbing. Where did that actually come from?
Yeah, it was incredibly striking. And you're right, the initial reports got it wrong. They incorrectly linked it to a Japanese artist named Midori Hayashi.
But that wasn't right.
No, that was another piece of misinformation spreading alongside the scare itself. Midori Hayashi had to clarify it wasn't hers. Eventually, internet sleuths tracked it down to the true creator, Link Factory.
Link Factory, who are they?
A Japanese special effects company.
Oh, so it was an actual thing, like a physical sculpture or prop.
Exactly. That makes the image even more intriguing, doesn't it? And somehow less like a purely digital ghost.
Yeah, definitely.
The sculpture, with its pale, almost alien-like skin, that sparse dark hair, and those very distinctive features you mentioned, it was first posted online way back in 2016.
2016.
Before the challenge.
Yeah, when it was part of a public art exhibition in Tokyo, I believe. And Link Factory has consistently stated they had absolutely zero connection or involvement with the Momo Challenge hoax.
It's so ironic, isn't it? This image, which became the face of so much online fear and anxiety all around the world, was actually just a piece of art from an exhibition in Japan a couple of years earlier.
Brian Bloy.
It is. And here's maybe the most unique, slightly bizarre, darkly humorous twist in the whole tale for you listening.
Hold on.
The original creator of the actual sculpture, the artist himself, a Japanese man named Kisek Iso, he confirmed in March 2019 that the artwork, the physical sculpture, it had actually been thrown away, discarded all the way back in 2018.
No. Why?
Because its materials, it was made with things like natural rubber and plant oils, had started to decompose. It was literally rotting away.
You're kidding. So while the internet was still buzzing with fear about Momo in early 2019,
yeah, during that second wave of panic.
the actual physical thing that started the image was already gone in the bin.
Yep, already gone. It's pretty surreal detail to wrap your head around, Ray.
That is wild. It really adds another layer, showing how the fear and the image had just taken on this life, completely separate from its original and apparently temporary source.
It really does. It's almost like the legend totally outlived the monster itself in a very literal way.
Wow. Now, this whole Momo thing was so widespread, it even started popping up in popular culture, didn't it? Like outside of news reports.
It certainly did. It seeped into the zeitgeist. On March 9th, 2019, Saturday Night Live actually did a sketch parodying the Momo meme.
Oh, yeah. How was it?
It featured this terrifying chicken-suited fast food mascot character that looks suspiciously like Momo. The humor came from that clear resemblance.
That's a great example of how deeply ingrained that image had become, right? Instantly recognizable enough for an SNL parody.
Absolutely. And the influence didn't stop there. There's a teen horror movie from 2022 called Grim Cuddy.
I haven't seen it.
It actually directly references the Momo Challenge as a central part of its plot. It explores those very anxieties of parents about online dangers manifesting in reality.
So the fear generated by the hoax actually inspired a piece of horror fiction years later. That's a pretty significant cultural impact, even if the initial threat wasn't, real in the way people thought.
It really is. And get this. In July 2019, Orion Pictures even announced they were developing a full-fledged horror film adaptation based specifically on the Momo hoax.
A movie about the hoax itself.
Yeah, so even though investigations pretty thoroughly debunked the initial claims, the story of Momo clearly tapped into a deeper vein of societal anxieties about the internet, about the safety of our kids online. It resonated.
It's incredible to think about this whole journey, isn't it? From those first sort of shadowy online whispers to genuine global panic, police warnings, investigations, the debunking process, and then even inspiring horror movies and SNL sketches.
It truly is a fascinating case study for you to consider. It shows how fear and misinformation can just spread so rapidly in our digital age.
Yeah.
While those early reports painted this terrifying picture of, like, a predatory online entity actively harming people.
Which sounded plausible at first.
It did. But the thorough investigations that followed revealed a phenomenon that was largely built on rumor, maybe some pranks, and amplified by a very real, very understandable anxiety about online safety.
And that lack of confirmed victims, people actually, directly harmed by this specific challenge,
right,
coupled with the expert analysis pointing towards it being a moral panic, it really makes you think about where the real danger might have been, doesn't it?
Exactly. It suggests that maybe the panic itself The widespread fear, the anxiety, potentially misdirected concerns and resources might have been the most significant negative impact. It also highlights just how easily one really unsettling image, combined with some vague, ominous threats, can just capture global attention in today's digital landscape.
Well, this deep dive into the story of the Momo challenge has definitely been eye-opening for me, and hopefully for you listening too. Such a powerful reminder, isn't it?
It is.
To approach these kinds of online scares with a really critical, discerning eye. And to, try and seek out verified information before just reacting to the most sensational claims.
Absolutely. It encourages all of us to think a bit more deeply about how information spreads, the role that fear plays in amplifying narratives, and just the importance of evidence-based understanding when we're navigating these online phenomena.
Couldn't agree more. Well, thanks for joining us on this exploration into the fascinating and, yeah, sometimes unsettling world of internet culture.
Thanks for having me.
If you enjoyed unpacking this digital mystery with us, make sure to hit that subscribe button for Tell Me More Stories Told As podcast. That way you won't miss any of our future deep dives into captivating events and phenomena.
There are always more stories out there.
There really are. We're always on the lookout for the next intriguing story to explore. So until next time.